25%. Now, there is nothing wrong, though, with preaching fiscal conservatism. I want it preached. I want it lived out. I want the federal government to balance its budget now. Not the Washington way, though. Not where they're going to raise your taxes just to pay for their irresponsible spending increases in their habits. I want it done the American way. I want to cut spending and reduce the size of government and let people keep more of what they earn. Our businesses keep more of what you're earning. Roaring back to life. But the Obama administration does not practice what it preaches. This is an administration that won't even produce a budget this go around for fear that we discover how reckless that they've been as fiscal managers. And at the same time, it threatens to veto a defense bill because of an extra jet engine. This administration may be willing to cut defense spending, but it's increasing, obviously. It's increasing spending everywhere else. And I think we should do it the opposite, the other way around. Cut spending in every single department apart from defense. No cutting corners on national security. That's the federal government's first and foremost job. Pay attention to address national security. Secretary Gates recently spoke about the future of the U.S. Navy. He said we have to ask whether the nation can really afford a Navy that relies on $3 to $6 billion destroyers, $7 billion subs, $11 billion carriers. He went on to ask, do we really need all these carrier strike groups for another 30 years when no other country has more than one? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Yes, we can. Yes, we do, because we must. Our Navy, as you well know, has global responsibility. It obviously patrols the sea lanes and safeguards the freedoms of our allies and ourselves. The Navy right now has only 286 ships, and that number may decrease. That will limit our options and extend tours for Navy personnel, making it tougher on everyone and lessen our ability to secure our allies and to deter our adversaries. The Obama administration seems strangely unconcerned about those matters, though. When George W. Bush came into office, he inherited a military that had been cut deeply, and he had inherited really Al-Qaeda that had been unchallenged, and an approach to terrorism that focused on bringing court cases rather than destroying those who sought to destroy us. And we saw some of the result of that in 9/11. When President Obama came into office, he inherited a military that was winning in Iraq. He inherited loyal allies and strong alliances. And because the media's pawing and purring over him and not really vetting him as a candidate, he also had the benefit when he came into office of unparalleled global popularity. Wow, what an advantage he had. So you'd think that their basic foreign policy outlines it should have been a little bit easier, certainly clearer. One, to commit to winning the war on terror, commit to winning, not just withdrawing, but winning the war in Afghanistan, commit to the fight against violent Islamic extremism wherever it finds sanctuary, and to work with our allies, and to be resolute with our adversaries. Promote liberty, not least because it enhances our security. It enhances our security when we're promoting liberty around the world. Unfortunately, though, those basic principles essentially seem to have been discarded. This administration has banned the phrase war on terror, preferring instead politically correct nonsense like overseas contingency operations is what we'll call the war on terror. Obama's Homeland Security Secretary calls acts of terrorism man-caused disasters. Heaven forbid we call it what it is. His reckless plan to close Gitmo, because there's no place to go with this plan to close Gitmo, it faces finally bipartisan opposition. The Attorney General just announced that a decision about where to try terrorists, like 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, it would be not announced until after the midterm elections in November. Is there something perhaps that he is afraid of us knowing? The President's new national security strategy does not even use the word Islamic anymore when referring to violent extremism. Does he think that the ideology of those who seek to kill Americans the term, but it flies in the face of reality. And as Senator Joe Lieberman noted, refusing to use the word Islamic when describing the nature of the threat we face, it's Orwellian and it's non-productive. It's counterproductive. In Afghanistan, it is true that President Obama approved deploying additional forces to the conflict finally. Most, not all, of the troops that were requested by commanders on the ground. Now this is a problem because it took months of indecision to finally get to that point, and it came at a very high price. That price? We had to name a date, July 2011. That is the date to begin withdrawal. This date is arbitrary. It bears no relation to conditions on the ground. It sends all the wrong signals, obviously, to our friends and to our enemies. We know our commanders on the ground are not comfortable with it. And as that great Navy war hero, Senator John McCain, recently put it, that's a problem because the decision to begin withdrawing our forces from Afghanistan arbitrarily in July 2011 seems to be having exactly the effect that many of us predicted it would have. It is convincing the key actors inside and outside of Afghanistan that the United States is more interested in leaving than succeeding in this conflict. We have been warned. Does the president really believe that the Taliban and Al-Qaeda won't be empowered by his announcing the date of withdrawal? They now believe that they can beat him simply by outlasting us. And you gotta ask yourself, what kind of effect does that have on our troops' morale and on our allies? See that in what I just mentioned, that's not the only area where the Obama administration has failed our allies. They escalated a minor zoning issue in Jerusalem recently into a major dispute with our most important ally in the Mideast, Israel, of course. They treated the Israeli Prime Minister shabbily in Washington, and we're wondering why some of our allies are kind of scratching their head, wondering, what the heck is America thinking right now? Why are we kind of poking our allies in the eye? When a Turkish-sponsored flotilla threatened to violate a legal Israeli blockade of Hamas from Gaza, the Obama administration was silent. And this all happened recently. When Israeli commandos were assaulted as they sought to prevent unmonitored cargoes from being delivered to Hamas terrorists, the Obama administration sent signals that, it might allow a UN investigation into the matter, an investigation that would be sure to condemn our ally Israel and bemoan the plight of Hamas. Now, and the mainstream media still doesn't have this one right. It just infuriated me to see the mainstream media take sides, crop pictures to make the conditions look different than they actually were. If the media would do its job, our world, certainly our nation, could be a better, freer place if our media would do the job and just report the facts. And don't even get me started on the media because, oh gosh, I tell you, so much has changed from when I studied journalism and received my degree. I swear we learned the who, what, where, when, and why. And granted, it was just a state university, and it took me 4.5 years to get a 4-year degree because I worked my way through college and I had to take time off. Oh, and heaven forbid if that happens. But you know what galls me about the media and why my relationship with the mainstream media, is not good? It's because I call them out on when it is that they are so biased, they are so prejudiced in their reporting, and they know that I know that we don't have a good relationship, and I call them out because of the United States military, because my son, who has chosen to put it all on the line for our freedoms, for our freedom of speech, our freedom of the press, I don't want to see that abused. I do not want to see him and all of our military personnel